All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and we got an amazing episode for you today. We have got a case study that's backed by popular demand. Dave Robertson's about to deliver it, Ben, so we're excited, but what else do we cover?
Well, Bryce, I'm also going to give you a solution to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the Housing Affordability Challenge, but you'll just have to wait till the end of the show in What's Making Property News.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, folks. You've got to check that out. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance, and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and of course, welcome back to you, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm well, but are we going there? Are we talking footy?
I dish it out. I've got to receive, don't I?
Wow. Mate, I sat on the couch watching the last 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
With Jane, who's obviously a Freo supporter as well. My beautiful wife is a Western Australian.
She's quality.
And I just said to her, I feel for you both. I felt vulnerable, and I had a feeling about.
I don't know what's worth, losing or you having some form of charity for me.
It shouldn't. Yeah. What do I say? Sorry.
Oh. Mate, I'm telling you, I didn't watch I watched the first half, and then, mate, when you see, I apologise for all of the people who hate sport or hate free or whatever, but I've got to get it out of my system, Ben. When you kick a full halftime score in any other game in any other part of the country, but for Freo it's always a full-time score in the 50s, and then you see them just in front. I just said to Andrea, I go, and she goes, "Oh, you're just such a terrible supporter." I'm like, no, I've seen this movie way too many times. And then anyway, so
yep.
So thank you for your charity, mate. I think it was genuine.
We want to believe. We want to believe, and they need to believe as well. They're a good side on paper. Let's hope they can find the form that should get them into the finals.
All right, let's move on, mate. Let's not have a pity party for any longer. A couple of things, mate. We are a couple of months away from my charity event that we're doing in Indonesia. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask a favour from our audience, Ben. We've raised over $50,000, so I am beyond stoked about that.
Outstanding.
Right? But we can do some more. So here's the favour, Ben. Hopefully by next week we will have a link that people on this podcast can support, because I'm donating my birthday, and I'd love for anyone who has received value from you and me, but specifically for me, just for this purpose, Ben. If I've added any value into your life, I would love you to support this event that I'm doing. And we will have a link for you to be able to go and donate. And we're going to bring back footage and imagery and the experience through our team who are going to capture it. But I'd love for you to donate if that's at all possible. We've done this for free. Most of the people who have been listening to us for a decade give us some really wonderful feedback, Ben, that they've been received some value. So if that is you, I'm going to ask you a favour, probably next week, if you'll donate. I'd love for you to do $1 for every year. It's $50, but if you can't afford that, $5 is fine. But I'd love for you to donate and help these wonderful people. And I assure you, Ben and I will share the stories, we'll showcase the impact, and we will tell you all of the amazing things that your money will do for these people who just simply cannot afford it, Ben. So that's coming up. And also, you and I did a webinar this week. We did it on Tuesday. The response was incredible. Thank you to those people who've given us that feedback. We're giving a very small window for anyone who was not able to make that webinar, Ben. If you click on this link on the screen, what's in the show notes, or you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/webinar. You and I did the how to retire on $3,000 per week, which is actually the topic that we're talking about today as well. But we've got a replay that will end at midnight on Monday, the 31st of March. So this comes out on the 27th of March. So there's a couple of days for you to go and watch it. Now, if you're listening to this after that, Ben, and you missed that date, you'll miss it. But if you're up to date, there is a small window where you can go and watch that webinar on replay. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/webinar, you can go and check that out. Hey, last week we did a Spruiker episode, Ben, and we got some feedback.
Yeah, I was really pleased about the, we got a lot of consumer feedback, and certainly I got a lot of hits on LinkedIn and people hitting me up saying it's a really timely reminder about people who have been stung. And I also had a lot of trade people who try to do the right thing. The professional operators in the industry are also seeing some of the activity that's also happening out there as well. And we had some really direct feedback on some certain operators, who will remain nameless. We don't want to end up in court. We know how litigious they can be. So we'll sort of keep it clean. But yeah, you got some interesting feedback from the buyer's agents, didn't you, Bryce?
Yeah, well, one of them in the marketplace who's active, and we're going to keep them nameless. They had a property in Geelong that one of our team looked at, and the range was 590 to 620, and we couldn't see value more than early sixes at best, right? But the person who bought it, the group, let's put it into the category of the Spruiker group, Ben. They bought it sight unseen at the top of the range, and they asked the agent this question. Can you do a walkthrough video for us? Because we won't be able to look through it. They asked the agent to do that, Ben.
You mean the selling agent, Bryce?
Who's got an incentive?
For the person who's got a vested interest in getting this property sold, who's potentially going to move past some of the more difficult sort of problems on the property. Yeah.
Tick. So
unbelievable.
So they asked the selling agent to do a walkthrough video, and then also said, this is quote unquote, can you show us some sales to justify $620,000? I bet they found them some sales, Ben, to justify $620,000.
That is absolutely extraordinary that a professional buyer's agent who's a licensed real estate agent who works on behalf of the buyer is sitting at a desk trying to buy a property and not doing their due diligence and not doing their own comparables with it. I mean,
You must have someone go through that property who is a proxy without conflict of interest. So it needs to be the buyer's agent themselves or the buyer's agent's team and the buyer's agent network. But it has to be someone going through that property who does not have a conflict of interest. And in this case, that wasn't the case, Ben.
Yeah. Now, and if you're working with a buyer's agent who can't guarantee those independent access and that, that, and the comps that they've put together as opposed to asking a selling agent to put some comps to just buy it at the top of the range. I mean, this is why certain markets just run, because there are buyer's agents who really aren't doing any work. They're just doing volume transactions, which is self-interest. And again, what is a spruiker's primary purpose? It's self-interest over their interest of their own customer. So I just found it unprofessional. I found conflicts of interest. So if you're working with a buyer's agent who can confirm that you've had an independent person assess that property, and of course you need building and pests, of course, they're absolutely mandatory, but you can't get the selling agent doing the video walkthrough. No. That's just lazy and it's unprofessional, and there's a clear conflict. And, we might even take it up with the Real Estate Institute of Victoria, because I'm sure they would be a little bit concerned about that process as well.
So there you go, folks. So we're going to call out some stuff. Thank you for the feedback. Hopefully that's had an impact on you. Hopefully that's worked out to give you more insights in the Property Spruikers 2.0. And as we see some of these things, folks, we'll let you know what they look like. Hey, Ben, we're going to do a budget review next week.
Yep.
Because we had a busy week this week, and we actually recorded this episode before the budget came out.
Yes.
So some would expect us to have some commentary around that. We will. We will just get to that next week. Hey, my Mindset Minute theme today, Ben, is be careful who you ask your advice from. I was listening to a podcast by Evie, I'm going to butcher the surname, Pompouris, who was a former secret agent with the US Secret Service. It's incredible. And she said this, and I thought, oh, this is so good that it's just a really nice, powerful analogy on what some people do. But it's be careful who you ask advice from. So this is what she said. Stop asking people who aren't qualified to help you. Go to someone who has specific knowledge about a decision you're trying to make. All right. Sounds pretty straightforward so far, Ben. Nothing too groundbreaking. But here's where the rubber meets the road. Don't go to your mum or your dad or your brother or your friend. Although they love you, their opinions are going to send you like a ping pong ball. That's how you become unsteady. Allow yourself to be in the driver's seat. So here's where we're building the analogy, Ben, and this is what I really want to take home for people. Yep. Allow yourself to be in the driver's seat. But what we do is we invite people into the car. We're like, yeah, you can drive my car, no problem. Then they get in the driver's seat. We put them in the driver's seat. Then we're in the passenger seat. Or in some cases, we get kicked to the back seat. And then what happens, Ben? What do we do? Here's where it goes. We get annoyed. Why are you driving like that? Why are you going that way? That's not really where I want to go. Then drive the car. That's the powerful part that I thought. She goes, Then don't put them in the driver's seat. Drive the car. Stop inviting everybody to drive it for you and being annoyed when they don't take it where you want to go. Thought it was just a powerful analogy, Ben. Don't let people in the driver's seat and delegate you to the back seat when they're going to take you to somewhere you don't even want to go, or they might not have the experience to take you where you want to go. I thought it was really cool. What do you reckon?
Yeah, very cool. I mean, well, it makes sense, right? There's, in our services, so I'll put our financial services hat on. So we talk about being trusted advisors, right? And we talk about being the guides in terms of taking people on that journey. But ultimately, you're also an accountability partner. But the accountability needs to go both ways. So, I mean, I like the fact that when we're having our initial conversations, that we talk about, hey, thank you for providing us with a big financial snapshot of your situation and your goals and everything like that. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to high five you on the things I really like what you're doing. But also, I'm going to be, I'm going to eyeball you and basically check in on a couple of things that I think we can improve.
Yeah.
Like that, you don't want a yes man everywhere you go, or you don't want, I tell the story when I talk to mum about our business. Oh, are you going to be okay? Like, isn't that too many people that you employ? Like all of the, it comes from a nice, kind-hearted,
And are you okay, mate? Are you okay?
Yeah, I think I'm okay. There's people here who don't want to see you get hurt. They're your parents, right? So they don't necessarily want you to take risks and experiment. And so I get all that. But if you are going to take risks, and that's investing, is taking risk, it's putting your money on the line, it's doing all of those types of things. So you potentially do want to get some advice from people who have been there, done that, and are showing the results that you're potentially looking for. But also making sure that they're working in your best interests. And I think that summarizes that nicely.
Folks, drive the car. Stop putting people in the driver's seat because you might not want to go where they want to go. Hey, Ben, I thought that was a nice segue for what we're talking about today, because we are going to ask someone who is at the coalface, who has guided a lot of people, to help us navigate a case study that we think our audience will really enjoy. You and I sat down recently with our head of property and wealth planning, Dave Robertson, to discuss a case study. And here's the conversation that you and I had. All right, Ben, very excited today. We have got a returning guest. His name is Dave Robertson, back by popular demand, I might add, Ben, because last time we had him on, there was plenty of incredible feedback, which was humbling for you and I, because we'd had a swing at it for about 10 years. And then Dave comes on and makes it really, really straightforward and understanding for everyone. But welcome back, Dave.
Thank you. Couldn't say no to come back again. So happy to be here.
Well, we're excited that you're back. So for those of you hearing Dave for the first time, he heads up our property wealth planning division. So from his vantage point, you as the listener get to get the insights from someone who's looking at sort of hundreds of scenarios and plans across our team, and really digesting that and feeding that back to you as our audience so that you can get an idea of what's happening at the coalface. But first question, Dave, what's the theme that you and the team are seeing at the moment?
Yeah, look, interest rates and cost of living has been a consistent theme for a while now, but we are noticing a bit more positivity, and people are feeling like we've passed peak inflation and peak interest rates. You've also got quite a few people now expecting lower interest rates coming, meaning that could put more competition into the market, more pressure on prices. So quite a few people are now asking the question is should I get in now? Should I get in early before the rushes there? So a bit more positivity around property and the market at the moment, which is great to see.
Hey, Dave, it's fascinating. Sorry, Ben, I know you're about to jump. It's fascinating to think that Ben and I stand on this platform and we say to folks, get in early, try and beat the rush, try not to get, but human nature just suggests that people want some confirming signals, and now we're getting some confirming signals and people are going, oh my gosh, there's a bit of a queue.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, it's probably where I was going with the question was around, we always say get in when you can afford to get in and stay in the game. And that comes down to job security. Are you getting a sense that people feel more confident about job security if we are through that sort of peak interest rate environment?
Yeah, there's a lot of that as well. It does seem like the job market out there is a bit more stable than previous years. We've been through some volatile times with COVID. That seems to be settling, and there's more resilience in the market and people able to plan further ahead now rather than the unknown of the short term.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, we've asked you to come up with a case study that we can share with the team, and you can give some insights on for a unique strategy that you've seen, Dave. So
Sure.
let's first of all dive in, but secondly, let's build a bit of a scene here. Let's set the scene and give a bit of backstory. You've come up with John and Jodie. Tell us a little bit about John and Jodie.
Yeah, look, what I've done is I've created a good case study here from a few themes that I've been seeing come through the team. And we'll get into the detail shortly, but a big part of this strategy and a big message here is you don't have to have all your ducks lined up for the next 20, 30 years to be able to take some action and be building a strategy now. So we'll go into a bit more detail as you'll see when we go through the strategy. But the basic backstory of John and Jodie is they're good income earners. They are renting. They like the flexibility of renting. They've moved a few times already where the job market takes them there. So they're not tied down anywhere. And so that is going to play a big part into the strategy and what we're doing. No kids at the moment, but likely down the track. So they're in their late 20s. And, at that age, it's hard to be planning out the next 30, 40 years, but taking some action and doing some sort of plan is still critical to make those right decisions in the short term.
It's quite common, isn't it, that you get a situation where a lot of people haven't planned their life out to the nth degree. And so that's what I really like about this strategy that sort of focuses on that flexibility and that, sort of optionality associated with that. Now, what we've got to say is, these guys are knowledge workers. So if you're not watching the video version of this and you're on the audio, let's just give you a couple of numbers. So household income is in that sort of 370 range. In terms, you can see the tax payable, 85,000. Annual surplus cash flow is still very, very healthy at 128,000. Total cash savings are 110, and we've got about 220,000 in existing property equity because they do have the one investment property, which we'll talk to in a minute. But I think it's important, like people see that 370 odd and they think that's all just income. There's also rental that's added into that particular number there. So you're talking about a couple of young professionals in that sort of knowledge work area where they might be taking in that range of 130 to 150 or $60,000 each.
Correct.
And without the kids,
Plenty of surplus.
There's plenty of surplus.
That's right.
So, Dave, talk to that first point that you made around they don't necessarily have their ducks lined up in a row. Can you double click on that to the context of what we've just talked about? What are you specifically referring to there?
Yeah, look, we meet lots of people that they know that they want to settle down and have kids at some point. They know that they want to get a home at some point, but they don't exactly know where or when. And so this strategy sort of highlights that we don't need to have fixed dates on set things. We can build around that and build flexibility into the strategy.
So is it a bit like sort of saying, because they're contract workers, I mean, they can obviously, knowledge workers contract doing assignment work, they're moving around, you were saying,
That's
in
right.
terms of having a look at that. So renting right now. So it obviously means is, if they're sort of thinking about a forever home, they probably haven't found that forever location yet. There might be just, try before they buy in certain assignments that they might be doing around the country.
So often we do go for that. You want to get your family home as soon as you can, but sometimes you don't know where. So and it could be a risk if you dive into the family home too quickly, and then you realise it's not where you wanted or not the type of property you wanted, and then we're just recycling and having to sell and buy again.
So, Dave, tell us a little bit about what are they thinking their long-term goals are with this plan?
Yeah, look, so family is important. They very likely want 2 kids. Yep. However, as people that have kids know that choice can change sometimes. It could turn into 3 or it could turn into 1. But kids is a big factor in this plan, and settling down in a home at some point.
So they're thinking there is a big rock in the jar in terms of forever home.
That's
right. Part of this story, but they're
flexible at the moment.
Bit unsure.
They're young. They don't have kids yet. They like the fact that their jobs can take them to different places.
Yep.
So we're not going to be rushing out and buying that family home straight away.
Okay.
So let's talk about that when we get to strategy. But our listener might be thinking, okay, well, if they don't know where it is, how do they actually plan for that? So we'll get there shortly. But Ben touched on this a little bit earlier. But let's just really set the foundation here, Dave, on their starting position. Their money in, their money out, and what their current assets and liabilities look like.
Sure. So we mentioned good incomes earlier. So you can see at the top here, $372,000 income. That's combined income, including the rental income. Mm-hmm. They've got a nice amount of cash in the offset there. If we come down, we've got the one property, reasonable LVR on that. It wasn't purchased too long ago, so there's been a little bit of growth in it. It gives us a little bit of equity to play with. So a $600,000 loan.
600 against an 820 purchase. So for the audio listeners along, that's basically got a 73% LVR as part of that, and total repayments of $3,050 is the interest-only repayments that they're currently paying on that property. Tell us a bit about what their living costs look like.
Yeah, living expenses are pretty reasonable. They've got rent's $380,000 a year, so that's their biggest expense. Is
$380,000.
Sorry,
wow, where do they live, mate? Do they live?
That'd be a nice place.
That's
do they live in Barangaroo or the lodge, or?
That'd be a tough plan to build, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure there'd be that much surplus.
Let's take a zero off that and bring it down to 38,000.
There we go.
There we go. All right,
a bit more sensible.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah. Other than their rent, it's just your general living expenses with a bit of travel in there for a couple with no kids.
Okay, so we're talking about around $61,000 in bill payments, which includes the rent. Correct. And then total spending, so which is sort of living lifestyle type spending of around $52,000.
Yep. Yeah. Sounds like a lot, but for their incomes, that's quite manageable, and they've still got a surplus circa $10,000 a month.
Now, there's a key point to highlight there too for those who are watching on Spotify or YouTube, and for the audio listeners, that when we said the bill payments and the spending, $61,000 and $52,000, they're actually significant numbers, because when you hit retirement, they're the only numbers that are really left to deal with. Because if you've planned the portfolio correctly, Dave, and you've reduced your loans, why are they the only 2 numbers that matter?
Well, that's all you've got for spending for lifestyle.
That's so. A lot of people go, well, we've written a book 3,000 a week, and it, effectively is 156,000. They go, man, that's not enough. Well, I earn more than that. It's like, well, yeah, but you're still paying off a mortgage, and you're still, in accumulation phase on your investment portfolio. But for this particular couple to maintain their current lifestyle, they need a passive income of 61 plus 52, which is 113,000. So that's important data for people to think about as they're listening to this.
Yeah, and strip out the rent, what you're saying, Bryce, and there's obviously 8,060 for the investment property, and there's the 36,600 for the loan repayments. Now, obviously with the owner-occupier future, it's going to be a forever home, so you expect it's, I'm sure you'll tell us soon, but I suspect it's going to be a $1 or $2 million purchase. And so off the back of that, there's going to be, that higher owner-occupied debt for a period of time. That's why cash flow modelling becomes really important.
That's right. We want to get that debt down before retirement as much as we can.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, as you've gone through this plan, Dave, what sort of future expenses have you had to think about? Ben's obviously hinted at the forever home, but what else have you factored in?
Sure, let me jump in here and talk a bit. The main ones are the future kids. So again, we're not locked in stone on the date, but they, not any time within the next couple years. So we've put those future kids out 3 to 4 years down the track there. In those planning for the future kids, we've modeled extra expenses once you do have bubs come along, as well as the planned time off from work. And then once we get back to work, childcare in there, followed by school fees. And expecting primary school to be relatively low cost, your public option, but we've factored in a $20,000 high school fee in there for both kids.
Okay, so one child in 2028, one child in 2029. I see that you've also got an additional $10,000 in setup costs.
That's right.
In sort of the pending arrival, as part of that child arriving.
Look, we always like to factor in some additional expenses, ongoing and one-off. So when you do have those kids, there's lots of things you need to buy. Obviously, the prams and the setup of the nursery, as well as potential medical costs. Not everything is covered by public.
And what about for Jodie in terms of impact for her work? Or is there any sort of maternity leave or paternity leave that also John might be considering?
There might be, but for this we've left it out, and we've just factored in 10 months off for Jodie before returning to work.
Yeah, is that for both of them?
That would be for both.
Yep. Great. Okay.
Other expenses, not too many. Again, they're not very set in stone on future changes and goals and so on. So we've got the kids in there. I mentioned they do like the flexibility of traveling. So we have factored in some large holidays later on in life.
Nice.
As well as the replacement cars.
Yeah, so those large holidays in today's dollar terms, $50,000 for a significant holiday in 2048 and also another one close by at 2050. So there's reward for effort. They're going to do their hard once they get their forever home, but they're building up that now at the moment, right, aren't they? And then you've got some car changeovers there as well, which are around $35,000 in 2026. And then for the second car, another $10,000 in 2027. So there's definitely flexibility or provisioning, I should say, in terms of those car allowances as well.
That's right. No, those large holidays, quite far down in the track, and the idea there is once the kids are older and finish school, they want to take the whole family on a bit of a reward.
Experiential holidays, I love it. Changing people's lives.
All right, mate. So that's setting the scene for what's in the plan, where they're at, their current position. So. This is the really critical part, right? What's the actual strategy? What is the combination with super that you've come up with for these people to be able to execute on? Oh, we haven't actually set the scene either on what are they shooting for? What's the passive income?
Yeah, look, they want to maintain similar lifestyle that they've got now. So we saw their spending figures earlier. So we use that as a baseline. there, and if we can achieve more and get a higher goal than that, we will. So after going through the strategy, we settled on the $3,000 a week.
Beautiful.
Sounds like a good title for a book, Ben. So we've got $3,000 a week, and okay. So how do they do it? Tell us what are they going to buy and when?
Sure. All right. Let's get into the details. So mentioned earlier that they've got the one investment property. They're considering a second investment property. Now, we had a discussion around should we purchase a property, what we call a hybrid.
Yep.
So it will be an investment property, but it ticks the boxes for something that they might be able to move into further down the track if they decide they want to transition from renting to a more stable location there. Now, going through that conversation, we sort of realised the original 800 to 850 price range of a new investment property isn't probably going to tick the boxes that they would want in potential locations that they might want to settle down. So exploring using some lenders' mortgage insurance, because you could see their cash flow is great. So their limiting factor is equity and cash.
Yep.
So using lenders' mortgage insurance, we could push that purchase price up to 1.1, right? Give them quite a bit of flexibility to get an investment property that they could see themselves moving into to start their family.
So I think it's important to labour that point, because effectively that's exactly what this sort of planning, when you're looking at cash flows, is about optimising and making sure that, because they could have just settled without any advice. Well, 850, let's just build to our portfolio with no science attached to that. But because they do have really strong household income, getting that better location does give us that choice for that hybrid scenario.
That's right.
So I think that's really important, for anyone who's thinking about, doing this at home, is what is that sort of comfortable level that you can get to if you're still a bit unsure. So this hybrid model is giving this couple an ability to buy in a better location, to have it as an investment property to start with, so then 2 in the portfolio plus renting. But they just might decide that location, in a few years' time, is the perfect location to turn around and renovate and significantly improve that property.
Yeah, that's right. So we've ticked more boxes with the one property here. So if we just went straight for a standard investment property at around 850, then we may find ourselves in 2-3 years' time now wanting to get that home, and we've used up the majority of our borrowing capacity.
Middle of suburbia in some capital cities and far out. Like, in terms of 850, and it's not even median house price in Sydney. So you could be absolutely in a regional town in New South Wales with that sort of price point.
And Dave, it's worth talking to the nuances there, because I know when we talk to your team, they get people come in and they say, I want to be a rentvestor. But the nuances of being a rentvestor, and I think you've touched on it here, and it's worth sort of expanding on that. You've actually looked over the hill for someone who is effectively a rentvestor but looking for a principal place of residence, because quite often people go, yeah, I'll be a rentvestor, and then at some point in time their life cycle changes and they want to pivot, and it's hard.
That's right. Yeah. So rentvesting can be a strategy that works, but you want to have some clarity. Are you going to stick with rentvesting for the next 20 years, or is it a temporary rentvesting? And if it's temporary, we need to be able to build some flexibility into the strategy that can accommodate a home at some point.
So let's have a look at the numbers. Let's have a look at the cash flow impact and liquidity position impact, and then see basically who's doing the heavy lifting when it comes to managing and holding that asset.
Yeah, absolutely. So over on our monthly cash flow graph, you can see here, as we've mentioned, surplus was very strong and comfortable. We've put in that purchase shortly in a few months there, and you can see the expenses jump up with the new lending. But it is an investment property, so income also jumps up there with the rental income. So cash flow, even after the purchase, remains quite comfortable. Over on the right here, you can see their cash position does drop there. We had to tip in some cash to pay the remainder costs. And look, that drops down to about $35,000 at the lowest point. So for a couple with no kids, that's something that they were comfortable with, knowing that they've got strong surplus and they're going to build that back up again. Dropping down to $35,000 was quite reasonable for them. If it was a different couple in a different situation with kids and so on, that would probably be pushing a bit too low on a cash buffer, something like that.
Well, let's just go back and have a look at that impact. You're saying it's still quite comfortable. So when you hover over here, you can see that, quick calculation on that says 28 from 19 is effectively $9,000 in still active surplus. So that 30, as you can see then by the liquidity side, that surplus doesn't stay down there.
Doesn't stay
it starts
down
to
for long.
rocket back up again in terms of that first purchase. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a temporary cash position that we recover on quite quickly.
Beautiful.
For those who are watching, and we can explain it to our audio, you can see that the green dips below your expenses on that graph in that monthly cash flow for a short period of time twice, Dave. I think that'll be worth talking through and how people trade through that particular scenario.
Yeah, good. These dips we can see here, they're the kids that we're having down the track.
Yep.
So essentially, we've got one income turning off there. So we do drop into a negative, but that being in a negative cash position or cash flow position for a temporary period of time is not an issue if we've planned for it. And that's where cash buffers play an important role. So again, knowing that we're only at 35,000 cash temporarily, and we build that cash position back up before we have the kids, having negative cash flow for a few months is no big issue.
Important. Yep. All right, so that's our liquidity position and our solvency position. What about the debt? Talk us through what the debt looks like and how the goal to get to retirement. What does the debt look like at retirement?
Yep. If we come down here, we can see their debt position. So at a pretty reasonable level of debt before the purchase, as we mentioned, using lender's mortgage insurance to pick up as much of a loan as we can does push their debt up around the 1.5, 1.6 range there. But you can see how steep this curve is in bringing that debt down, right? So without any further purchases, which we'll show you another purchase shortly, but you can see if they were to do nothing more after this, that debt gets paid off reasonably quickly by 2039.
And what's the peak LVR there, Dave, in terms of...
Yeah, peak LVR goes up to 85%.
Yep, hence the LMI premium being paid. Yep.
Dave, a quick explanation for those watching, the difference between the red and the blue line?
Yeah, look, good question. The red line is including the cash in the offset account, right? So we are often recommending not making extra repayments into the loan, but building up the offset account. So talking a lot about flexibility, offset accounts give you more flexibility as well.
Yeah, nice. All right, so tell us at retirement, what does debt look like?
Well, we're well and truly debt free by retirement in this example, but we're not finished the strategy yet. There's a bit more to play out. So we've got this next investment property, which gives them now 2 investment properties. And this one's one that they could potentially move into to start their family. Okay. We did have further discussions, though, around a $1.1 million property. Will be nice for kids when they're young, but as the kids get bigger, they can't see that as being their dream home. So after the kids, we need to consider an upgrade to get that dream home. Okay, so I'll take you through that now. So again, it's down the track again. So we're not fixed on a single price for that dream home. We did talk about some price ranges, and it really could be anywhere from 1.6 mil up to 2 to 2.1 mil there. So again, part of this strategy in providing flexibility is we explored both of those price ranges and in between those price ranges.
So there's a couple of scenarios there that you're looking at really, and that is that what would be the justification of going 1.6 say versus 2.1? What's the thinking behind that?
It would likely be they're happy with a location further out from the city, so where you can get land for much cheaper.
Yep.
So that depending on their careers in 10 years' time, if they're still in the same industry and they've got the flexibility to work from home, they could see themselves much further out from the city, and you'd get for much cheaper.
So a bit of a lifestyle property as opposed to obviously the value of the land closer in. Obviously is a little bit higher as part of that. Would there be any other consequences if they did go to that high, like in terms of when you're running your models? What was the consequence of basically taking on, if you are going to buy a $2.1 million owner-occupied property, what were some of the big considerations there? Because that's all a large amount of
absolutely
non-deductible debt.
Yep. Yeah, look, you can see after this purchase they're already at a pretty high debt level. If we tried to purchase at 2.1 mil after the kids, we're just not going to have enough borrowing capacity or we're not going to have enough cash to be able to make that purchase.
Right.
So what we've got for them now is we've got 2 properties they could potentially sell. And we explored the scenarios of selling both. Now, if we sold the more expensive $1.1 million property, that would give them enough to purchase at around the 2 mil to 2.1 mil.
Right.
If they decided to go for the lesser price, around 1.6 to 1.7, they could actually hold on to that more expensive property and sell the 800. So in both scenarios, there's a sale. We need to sell one of them to get the dream home, but we've got a bit of flexibility on which one do we sell based on which price point we settle for in the future.
And is there also that sort of other flexibility if they bought the 1.1, which we just saw there, where they actually don't mind the location and then they could potentially renovate, that property and turn it into an owner-occupied? Now, we haven't done that in the models, but this is just a classic case of scenario modeling, right? That's what you get to scratch those itches, to make the invisible visible. You get that opportunity to see what those models potentially look like, and that is reassuring. I mean, I know what it's like when I was doing the work with customers face to face. It's like, okay, so we still got like you say, flexibility and choices if we change our mind. The answer to that is absolutely yes. So let's walk a mile. That's right. See a mile in terms of what that story looks like. So take us through, the second purchase.
Yep. So what we've done is we highlighted here these dips earlier with the kids.
Yep.
So we've waited until after they've had those kids. And so we're looking at around 2032, 2033 that's likely around the time where they'll be a lot more confident on where they want to settle down long term with that dream home.
Yep.
Okay. So in the model here, we've put a sale in of the 1.1 property we purchased.
Yep.
There.
And you can see, because this is an owner-occupied purchase, there's no spike in the income because there's no rent coming off it, but there is obviously a spike in those holding costs.
That's right. So you can see new loan, so the expenses jump up. Even though we're selling one property, we're buying a bigger property, so expenses are still going to go up. Yep. But it remains at a manageable level in there.
And have we factored in the capital gains implications into the model?
Correct, yeah. So if we're selling that investment property, obviously they're going to pay capital gains. So that gets factored into the model, an estimate only, but it's a reasonable estimate. But that gets paid at the end of the financial year. Now, if they do decide to move into it, because remember it's a hybrid, if they do decide to live in it for a certain period of time, the capital gains will be less because maybe it was only an investment property for 40 to 50% of that time.
Yep.
So let's recap. They came into the strategy already having a property. You've now bought them an investment property for 1.1. And then at some point in the future, when they're a bit more certain post-kids, you've made that recommendation to sell the 1.1 in order to buy a principal place of residence for closer to that $2 million mark, and with the view that they'll have a bit more certainty at that point in time on where that purchase will be.
Correct, yeah. If we were trying to lock in a forever home right now, we'd be guessing.
Okay. And also for the benefit of everyone who's learning about this process, is that $2 million in today's dollar terms, or is it $2 million in future value? Because maybe if I'm buying this in a decade's time from now, is that going to be really worth $2 million?
$2 million may not get you much
Yep.
in that time. So yes, that's in today's dollars, and we apply growth on that. So when we do buy in 2033, 2034, it'll be in those future dollars.
Okay. So
the plan actually reflects that, folks. So just so you know, it makes sense in today in your mind, but when you actually come to execute and buy, the model actually puts it in at a higher price with a higher LVR and factors in your resources at the time to make sure that LVR is actually within reach for you.
That's right, Bryce, because the real test here is that's a higher debt, and you've got to pay that debt off in future money terms. So that's where it's really important, because a lot of people go, well, it's not a realistic model. Yes, it is. It's realistic because we are taking on that extra debt at the future value of what we anticipate today's property prices will be in the future in those locations. I think that's a really important point to highlight.
Yeah, it is. And it can get complicated talking about future dollars and today's dollars. And that's where I love the fact that all the maths is done for me. And everything I'm talking about is in today's dollars.
Okay. So let's have a bit look under the bonnet now. Okay, we're looking at the cash flows there. We'll go down and have a quick look at the debt in terms of what that looks like for this particular example. So we can see we've taken that debt to a peak debt of just over 2.7 million. We can see there, and then you can see the LVRs and the pay down of that money being parked in offset accounts as part of that. And then obviously there's an impact on investment properties for tax deductibility.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just have a quick look at that tax breakdown that you have below?
Before we run off that graph, Dave, it's important to why did that blue line go south very quickly? The hint is in the sale, but why does that look like that?
Yeah, this little dip over here is we're selling one property before buying the next one, so it all happens very close together. So, but you can see a bit of a dip there. These other dips you can see here in the blue lines, this is indicating when a loan is fully offset and we could close it. So what we always recommend is before closing the loan, so if your account's fully offset, we could close that loan, but before you do, you should always consider, would I need some of that money in the future?
What am I going to do with that liquidity? Liquidity is always about buying your time. So I think that's a great point. So, Robbo, what we can see here is obviously we've got the tax income breakdown, but also next to that, we also have the income source. So take us through that chart there in terms of the income source.
Yeah, look, this is a really helpful chart for us as advisors and also for our clients to understand. What we do here is we separate personal income and income coming from superannuation.
Yep.
So once we get to the retirement dates here, you can see the blue bar is personal income.
Yep.
Having obviously stopped work, the only personal income we've got left is the investment property.
Yep.
There, and then the green bars is income coming from super.
Yep.
There. So you can see at the moment that retirement spending, that $3,000 a week, is broken up roughly about 60-40 coming from super and the investment property there.
Yep.
So you could imagine without that investment property and that full $3,000 a week coming from super, you're going to be drawing a lot more out of super.
Fantastic. So let's now move into the wealth projection overview. What has all this created for us in terms of getting a sense of that? Because we've done the cash flow, we've done the debt management as part of that. Obviously, you've just shown us the passive income story breakdown there that's going on. So take us into that wealth projection overview.
Yeah, look, the big wealth projection here shows our assets, which we've got the large family home, as well as an investment property. And then the grey boxes along here is superannuation, which is just consistently working in the background there. Now, being in their late 20s, they've still got a lot of working life ahead, and you can see the compounding effect of that. The yellow line is the overall debt there. So as the assets are growing, you can see our debt's going down, and we get to debt free just around the time of retirement.
Yep, beautiful. So you can see there, retirement is around that sort of 2055 range, and you can see a nice little snapshot in terms of what's happening in regards to savings, superannuation. So total savings and superannuation in 10 years' time is 762,000. In 20 years' time, it's 1.8 million. And then in basically retirement at 2055, it's 4.9. So you can see that nice big stretch. And that's the power of compound. And remember, that final third is where most of that gain occurs. You can see the investment property in future value terms there is 4.7 million. There's no other investments. We keep this scenario really simple. Total investment assets, you can see again, is just the 4.7 across the super and the properties. The personal property there, it's hard to believe, but it's, with the power of compound, we're seeing a number there in future dollar terms of 14.9 million. So that $2 million purchase is definitely accelerated over that time period. And then you can see, yes, just before 20 years, we had still debt of 1.2 million, but then by retirement, which is another decade on in 2055 versus 2045, we can see that debt free. Back in present value terms, though, all of those numbers, to give you some context, we have present value terms in 20 years' time. The nest egg, which is basically all of your investments outside of your family home, is 1.9 million. And by that time in 2055 at retirement is 4.29 million. So that, those sort of large exaggerated numbers actually don't seem that big when you bring them into present value terms, which is reversing inflation out of those numbers in simple terms.
So a great outcome there for as well achieving quite a large family home. So 2.1 million on a family home is
in today's dollar terms.
Today's dollars is a big step there, but you can see here it hasn't come at the compromise of their retirement.
Yeah, and that's what we love about it. And again, as they walk a mile and see a mile, there is that flexibility around how there's options for them in terms of how they play those final steps. And the reality is there could have been a sneaky little investment property in there as well, and still have a little bit of debt left, but they'd need it, not for the 3,000 a week that we were targeting.
And folks, that's what financial peace looks like. And to that point there, Ben, when you just said, look, you could have put a sneaky little investment property in, that's a goal-driven versus an ego-driven thing, isn't it? Because people often confuse the fact that they need to accumulate as many of these things as possible. But when all we focused on in this plan is getting to the goal on time. So did we get to the goal? Yes, $3,000 per week. Did we achieve some of the things that they wanted to achieve? Well, if we go back to the beginning, flexibility and optionality was something that they wanted in their plan. I think we achieved that. They didn't actually have a clear roadmap on what the next 20 years would look like, but they had a 30,000-foot view of some of the key milestones along the way. So we were able to factor that in. It allowed them to have the flexibility of travel, the flexibility of going where the work is, and for some people who have already got an investment property, it allowed them to bring that into a strategy that has the eye on the prize rather than just being a collection of properties. So, Dave, I think that, I said it before, that's what financial peace looks like. I think we've actually been able to successfully demonstrate how with a combination of super, just a handful of properties allows people to actually do this and stay within what the ATO says is the bell curve, where most people don't actually go and buy 5, 6, 7, 8 properties. They usually stop at one and just a handful get to 2 or 3. So I think there's some ticks all around in that strategy that shows people that it's possible to get 3,000 a week without overextending.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Ben, we could go for another one. But yeah, you need to ask, is that just the ego piece and accumulating for the sake of it? Or do you want more flexibility because you've got debt-free sooner?
Yeah, sometimes it is an insurance policy. Sometimes it just feels like whether we're going to potentially make it, and the one extra property then basically gives us that insurance. But in this particular case, because the incomes are so strong, and because there's obviously an opportunity to get the debt down quicker off the back of those really strong incomes, we don't have that interest cost that's lagging over that time period. So that then means that though the passive income off the property is generated quicker, and that ultimately meant that they didn't necessarily need any further as part of that story. Now, of course, these are all hypotheticals in terms of the performance of the properties over that time.
Sure.
If there's flat periods during certain times, that will adjust, the timing of the next purchase. But all of that should be then done in concert with talking to their property investment advisor to know basically, when they are in a position to go. And that should be both proactive in those discussions, because in some cases you can have really great runs, which can move your strategy to an earlier position, or in other cases, unfortunately, you can have flat periods of property, and that ultimately means that we're just going to have to wait a little bit there to see that equity get created that didn't actually come too quickly. And so ultimately, again, it is about navigating that pathway like a business would with their own budgeting and their business plans, that there's always going to be some tweaks along the way, but you want to basically stay between the lines in terms of the goal that you're trying to achieve. So it is a journey, and it's definitely a process. It's not an event, as you would say, Bryce.
As I would say, Ben. So thank you, Dave. We set Dave the challenge to come on here and just give us a case study that's a little bit left of centre. It's a bit unusual, something to have our audience to think about. So, folks, we plan on having Dave come and do this regularly throughout the year. So a couple of things. If you think that what you've heard today would benefit some of the people or the people around you, it'd be great for you to take a screenshot wherever you're listening and send that off to a friend to have a little listen. If you are actually listening at the gym or running or at home, and you're audio only, I'd certainly encourage you to go and have a look at the numbers as a follow-up, so you can check that out as well. And Ben, this is the format that you and I have just put together in our book, How to Retire on $3,000 per Week. So I want to encourage folks that if you want to be the first, with Dave's help, 7 case studies that we've put into that book, Ben, 7 different eclectic case studies to hopefully have people try and identify with at least one or one and a half of them to see how $3,000 a week works for them. We want to encourage people to go onto our wait list for the book. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/playbook-waitlist, you will be the first to know. We will arrange a discount. We will give you a bunch of additional bonuses as well. So go and check that out. But Dave,
those details are in the show description, Bryce.
Show description on the screen here, all around. So, Dave, thank you for that, mate.
Thanks,
Ben and I are at the heart of property investing, numbers nerds anyway. So it's kind of indulging us at the same time as indulging the audience with some of these numbers. But mate, we're gonna set you the challenge for next time to come up with another little quirky case study that we can run through. But mate, thanks for joining us again today.
Pleasure. Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. Oh, there you go, Ben. It's always good to have someone come in who's just looking at scores and scores and scores of these scenarios. Just come and share with our audience the nuances of what it takes to put a plan together.
Yeah, it's great to sit down with David and the team and just flesh out those types of ideas. But what I really would be hopeful for from our community is if you have queries or questions about the nuances, go to the YouTube video and we've opened the comment section up. So write your questions in there, because that will help us improve how we showcase some of these case studies. So yeah, I'm encouraging if you've got a little niggling question or a nuanced question that you want to know in terms of how's that possible or whatever, just write your question down there and we'll hopefully address it on a future episode.
Yeah, Ben, to your point, YouTube is where you talk about that. But if you've got questions, you can go to the website, thepropertycouch.com, and leave us a scenario that you'd like to see. Write into us, let us know, because we've surveyed our audience, Ben, and they've told us that this is the content that they want to hear. So we're trying to provide as much as we possibly can of this style of content for our audience, which is great. Hey, thanks again, Dave. We appreciate you. Hey, my life hack today, Ben, I came across. So you and I both have teenagers. I'm trying to navigate. If anyone's got a playbook for that, if they could send that to me, I'd be
a workable playbook.
Yeah, forever grateful. But I came across this the other day, and I thought it was really good for some of the conversations I've been having with my boys. And credit was the at Big Life Journal, and it's a little story, so I'll read it out, and there's a takeaway at the end, Ben.
Yep.
But my daughter came home in tears. She said, a girl in my class said my clothes are weird. Here's what I told her. First, I gave her a huge hug. I know it hurts to hear something like that from another girl. Then I decided to help her come out stronger after this. Oh, this is good, Ben. I grabbed an apple from the table and asked, if I said apples grow on trees, is that a fact or is it an opinion? She looked a bit confused, and then she goes, a fact. That's right. A fact is true for everyone. You can see it and check it with science, right? You can see it or check it with science. So then I asked, but if I told you apples are the best fruit in the world, is that a fact or an opinion? She thought for a second, then said, that's an opinion. Exactly. That's just what I think. Someone else may say mangoes are better, Ben, and that's actually my opinion. Mangoes are better than apples. So I looked at her and asked, so when a girl said your clothes were weird, is that a fact or is that an opinion? She paused. She answered, an opinion. Exactly. Just because somebody says something doesn't make it true. So I pointed to her hoodie. You love these clothes, right? She nodded. That's what matters. Her calling them weird is just her opinion, and you don't have to agree. Her shoulders relaxed a little, so I went on. When you know the difference between fact and opinions, unkind words lose their power over you. If someone says your hair is ugly or you're bad at maths, ask yourself, is this fact or is this opinion? If it's opinion, you decide if you believe it. So she felt a little bit better after the talk, and I know it will take a few more times for it to really sink in, but here's the takeaway, Ben, and here's the life hack for us parents as we have these difficult conversations with our teenagers as they navigate peer pressure. The takeaway, our kids will hear cruel words. They will meet people who don't like them. But if they learn to separate facts from opinions, hurtful comments will lose their power over them, and our kids won't crumble every time someone says something unkind. So, Ben, there's a little life hack for folks who are listening, who are parents, who are navigating this, and something that just crossed my radar, that I've had a variation of this conversation with the boys, and so far it's going pretty good.
I like it a lot. I mean, I watch my boys playing video games and a bit of trash talk that sort of goes on when they're playing. Like, and I just sit there and I do cringe and I pull my sons up and I say, hey, boys, that's disrespectful. Like, ultimately, we're trying to teach them. Now, it feels sort of ineffective or, non-offensive because it's just banter, but it's not. It's teaching poor behaviours. And obviously, we want our kids to have nice manners, be kind and generous to people. Those comments they wouldn't say to people on face-to-face, like social media anyway, right? Always never play the man, play the ball. Like, it's, anyone who's playing the man usually has not much value to add to the conversation. No. Always think about what they're adding in terms of their views, some backed in science or whatever it is. But the moment they start calling names out or playing the man, they're really not a person of substance. And I think that's a good lesson for all.
The rule for social media is losers are in the comments and winners are in your DMs, So,
yeah,
but there you go, parents. There's a life hack today. Teach your kids. Let's all. I'm talking to myself here. Let's be honest. Let's all teach our kids to separate facts from opinions. Hey, Ben, what's making property news?
Well, Bryce, at the start of the show, I talked about potentially saving hundreds of thousands of dollars to make housing more affordable in this country. And of course, I am talking about, drum roll please here, the cost that we have to pay in taxes in this beautiful country of ours, this almost social democracy that we live in. It's bordering on that. we have an enormous amount of tax that we have to pay. And so I wanted to highlight that in a recent updated report, according to the Taxation of the Housing Sector report from the Housing Industry Association and the Centre of International Economics. Here's what we've learned, Bryce. 49% of greenfield estates is in Sydney is made up of taxes. Let's run through the other capital cities. Melbourne, 43%. Brisbane, 41%. Adelaide, 37%. Hobart, 37%. Perth, 36%. Now for infill, so this is not new greenfield estates where they're doing subdivision, but infill apartments, 38% in Sydney, 34% in Brisbane, 33% in Hobart, 32% in Melbourne, 31% in Adelaide, and 30% in Perth. Now, what does that correlate to, Bryce, in actual dollar value? So a house and land package, are you sitting down, all those people in Sydney, right? A house and land package, the amount of taxes in the price that you pay on a typical house and land package in Sydney, $576,000
Shut the gate.
are in taxes. Brisbane, 348,000. Melbourne, 373,000. Hobart, 257,000. Adelaide, 237,000. And Perth, 237,000. So governments, if you just didn't waste all of the money that we gave you and you spent it wisely, you wouldn't need that much tax. And by not needing that much tax, you could actually make housing more affordable in this country.
Very well said, Ben. And if you want to listen to a little bit more about those taxes and how it's like pushing water uphill, we did an episode with Tim from the HIA. So we'll put the detail on the screen here. We'll put it in the show notes so that you can go and have a look at that. But mate, another great What's Making Property News, another great way for people to say hundreds of thousands of dollars. All they need, mate, I've said West is best here for a long time. So
yes, very attractive in the West, very competitively priced. That's what I said. Their economy is well positioned. Their competitive advantages are real, and they obviously get mining royalties, which obviously helps them. But they're running a surplus. They've got bugger all debt and interest that they have to pay on their debt, so they don't have to raise the taxes like the other states and territories have to do. It's really important. One job politicians have to do is grow an economy, run a very, very robust economy that's not driven by government spending, that's actually driven by enterprise and investment spending and corporate spending, all of the things, and small business spending, not by governments. If your state or territory is run by government spending, and that's the only way you have a strong economy, it's bound to fail. It's bound to fail at some point.
West is best, except for footy clubs at the moment, Ben, and you don't need to say anything at that point. But mate, it's been fun hanging out with Dave Robertson today. It's been fun unpacking case studies, and it's certainly been fun trying to help our audience understand how they can get to their goal on time, Ben. And that's get a passive income. Using property is a very powerful tool to do that, mate. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Act on it, folks. See you next week.